Zirkzee, everything about you so Zirkzee. You don't even know what you've got. You're gonna sign for United. Oh. Anyway. Good afternoon, Real Reds. This video is going to take a detailed look at Joshua Zirkzee, the Dutch Bologna striker, and why Manchester United are interested in signing him. So today we're going to take a look at his youth career, his time at Bayern Munich, the multiple loan spells he's had, the Bologna revelation under Thiago Motta. I'm also going to take a look at his player profile and take a look in depth tactically and why there is so much interest in Europe currently being generated around this phenom of a striker. So let's just start off with a basic profile run through. Nationality, of course, he is Dutch. He's right-footed, but very good on his left as well. I think they call it ambipedal or ambipedal. I don't know how it's pronounced. He can use both feet, basically. He's 23 years old. He's 6'4", so he's a big boy, and he plays as a striker. But where did it all start for Joshua Zirkzee? Let's take a look at his youth career. So Zirkzee had a youth career that included quite a few clubs, one most noticeably being ADO Den Haag, which also rhymes with Ten Hag. A coincidence? I don't think so. Before eventually moving to Feyenoord, where we know they've produced a number of talents before. 1 year after joining Feyenoord, he moved to Germany to join Bayern Munich's academy, which then started an interesting journey in his career. So Zirkzee made his debut for Bayern Munich 2, scoring a hat-trick in his first game for the side, impressing coaches instantly and teammates around him. After spending time in the Bayern youth side, he then made his first team appearance in the Champions League 2019 against the famous Bottlers in Tottenham Hotspur. Only got 4 minutes, granted, but sometimes, you know, when you get a taste of first team in these kind of pivotal moments, it has a huge effect for the rest of your career. So a special moment for Zirkzee in that sense. He's played 32 games for the second team in Bayern Munich and 12 for the senior at his time whilst he was there. Still raw, of course, still developing his game, not the player that he is today. But never helps when you're trying to push into a first team when you have the absolute giant in Robert Lewandowski, because let's be honest, no one's going to throw him. And I think that season he scored 34 goals just in the league alone. So yeah, I mean, you're going to have to be something next generational, one of the best players on the planet to dethrone him effectively. So he was loaned to Parma in January 2021 to get a little bit more experience in a different league with a different kind of demand, a different, you know, tactical setup. But this actually ended in a little bit of a disaster for Zirkzee, which, you know, it can happen. Look at Ahmad at Rangers. Loan spell didn't go well, but then he went to Sunderland and he absolutely killed it. So Zirkzee was limited to 4 appearances for Parma off the bench, and he also suffered quite a big injury as well. So if you're thinking about going on loan to Parma, maybe don't. In August 2021, he then decided to move to the Belgium Giants in Anderlecht, and that is where his fortunes started to turn. Under the boss at the time, Vincent Kompany, who ironically is the Bayern Munich boss at the moment, Zirkzee developed his game quite a lot. And that's credit to Kompany as well. He had a big influence in his career as well as Thiago Motta. In that season, he finished the 21-22 season as the club's top goal scorer with 16 goals, in addition to providing 9 assists in 34 league starts. So very impressive for a young player. And this started hitting those radars of other clubs around Europe. And that's where the Bologna revelation comes into it, really. In August 2022, you know, if you look at it, he's moved on like quite a few clubs in a small kind of time span. In August 2022, Zirkzee moved to Bologna in a transfer which proved to be fantastic for his career and his development as a whole. In his first season, though, he only managed 2 goals and 2 assists in a season kind of adaptation. You still had Marko Arnautovic there, who's predominantly the senior striker. And of course, in football, it doesn't always work out immediately. In some cases, there are transitional phases. But Bologna kept faith in him, and they saw the natural raw talent that was there. It just needs to be, you know, guided in the correct way. What changed significantly in Bologna's case was a fresh tactical breeze with a new boss coming in Thiago Motta, who I referenced before, had a huge influence in Zirkzee's game. And initially, like I said, wouldn't start him. He had a proven striker in Arnautovic up top, and he only wanted a system with one number 9. And he also went on record to say Zirkzee wasn't mentally ready for the challenge yet. So there, you know, he's setting the bar. Go and meet it, and that's what Zirkzee did. So with a couple of clips around the air and a couple of stern words and, you know, tough love or whatever it is you want to call it, He came around, he spent the time on the bench watching Arnautovic's movement, obviously his time at Bayern Munich as well. He studied Lewandowski and became a real kind of scholar of the game, you know, learning his trade, which you do, which any striker would do. You learn from the best, right? Not sure about Arnautovic, but Lewandowski is definitely a good example. Either way, whichever way you look at it, he had a solid education as a striker. This season, Zirkzee's become one of the most in-demand forwards in the world with 18 goals and assists in 37 appearances. And the Phoenix is finally starting to rise. Now, people will hear them statistics, will say 18 goals and assists in 37 appearances. And it predominantly, it's just people who play FIFA. They'll be like, that's not good, that's shit, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But for a young striker still learning his trade in Italy, I mean, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Now, there are, you know, some other concerns that I'll get into deeper in the show, but that's not a bad start. And you look at Rasmus, for example, who we signed, you know, his numbers weren't far off that. In fact, he may have even been worse at Atalanta. So, yeah, you're working with raw potential there. Don't forget that. But what type of striker is he? What is his profile? That's what we all want to know, right? So when you're talking about pure shooting ability, he's a strong finisher, he's composed in front of goal, he's got precision and power, he's technically gifted, fantastic first touch, immaculate footwork on the ball in kind of tight areas. And that's what I was most impressed with when I've watched clips of him and watched him for Bologna previously. His confidence to use both feet as well. I mentioned before he's ambipedal. I don't know how you pronounce the word. He can use both feet. You see ambidextrous when it's both hands. I believe with both feet it's ambipedal. So basically, in layman's terms, he's got a 5-star weak foot on FIFA. And I think that's how we'd probably describe it. So very good on both feet, which is obviously a huge boost for any striker. He's strong in possession, effective at keeping the ball close to his feet, partnering that with like this kind of low centre of gravity as well. So he can kind of shift the ball away in certain areas as, you know, these defenders start to engage. He's got strong link-up play, can drop into midfield, fantastic, you know, popping a pass off to a teammate, dropping deep in tight spaces, whilst also dragging defenders as well and creating space for others around him, because I think that's a quality that a lot of people don't talk about with strikers. You know, it's all about what they do on the ball, how many goals they score, not dragging opposition players away and having that creative intelligence to know when to do it and when not. Not to mention his strong hold-up play as well, which I've not even spoken about yet. You know, he's really good at using his frame to shield the ball away from opponents. And if you was to draw kind of a natural comparison to that, and again, it's another Bayern Munich player, Harry Kane. I'm not saying he's the same kind of quality as Harry Kane, but in shielding the ball, he's very similar in that sense, and people will get that reference. Now, one thing that Erik ten Hag likes in his strikers, and one of the reasons why he signed Rasmus Højlund, was because he loves strikers who work hard and they are pressing machines. And throughout all parts of the pitch, Zirkzee is hard working to win the ball back. Mentally, he's got intelligent box movement, again with the unselfish theme, dragging defenders, disorganising defences, creating space anywhere where he is for other players. And sometimes that might be a concern for people who just want a pure number 9, and it is something maybe you can work on, but I'll get into that in a moment. If you look at his metrics, take-ons and progressive passes, Zirkzee completes 1.69 successful take-ons per 90, which is his 90th in that kind of percentile, and 2.79 progressive passes per 90. That's 83rd percentile, so quite good metrics in that respect. Also, being 6'4", he uses his strength and frame to navigate through the opposition, making it difficult to be brought down, which you absolutely need for the Premier League. That's what we always say. Physicality, robust, pressing machine, technically gifted. He's got all of them. So I get why there's some concerns from some people that I really respect online who were talking about him, saying they don't think he's the answer. For example, Academy Scoop put a tweet out saying, I don't think he suits the Premier League. But I think all those qualities I've just mentioned, technically sound, tick. Physical presence, tick. Presses like a monster, tick. Technically gifted. I don't know if I already mentioned that, but tick. So in that sense, I think he would fit the Premier League. And one of the ways I heard him being described, and I thought this was almost, I couldn't have put it in these words. It was accurately put. Zirkzee is tall, strong, and imposing. He's one of those forwards that looks big even when standing in between centre-backs, and yet he has the touch and technique of a number 10. He plays with the flair of a player who spent hours watching YouTube compilations of Ronaldinho's vast array of tricks and flicks. So I'm not just going to talk about the player. I want to give you examples as well as when he stood out in a certain in particular game and when he's looked really, really good. So one outstanding appearance in a Coppa Italia win over Inter Milan at the San Siro. He turned the game with 2 incredible assists, and one of which was a back heel. I'll put it on the screen. You also had the Torino coach come out after a 2-0 loss to Bologna as well, and said at times he felt like he was watching a peak Zlatan in action, going on record to say he's an atypical striker that manages to score a lot of goals. His coach at the time, Thiago Motta, who manages Juventus now, says Zirkzee plays that dual role perfectly. He presses, makes plenty of tackles, and he's generally just a consistent thorn in the side of defenders. There are forwards who think only about goals, but not Joshua. He has a big heart, and that makes the difference. And I can't help but think with the unselfish wingers that we have, sometimes tactically that would be good to switch up. You look at Marcus Rashford, for example, who benefited a lot from a Wout Weghorst, who, again, Dutch striker, less selfish in that sense. I think Zirkzee's much better than Weghorst, but you saw Marcus Rashford benefit from it a lot. So, if you want to get your best out of your wingers in that sense, Zirkzee, could be that nucleus for that. And same with Bruno Fernandes advancing it as well. Both of them can interchange in that sense. I think it's a good tactical option. But let's not just praise the kid. He's not absolutely perfect. He's not, R9 reincarnated. There is room for improvement. So if Zirkzee was to move to a bigger club, Manchester United, he'll obviously be expected to score a lot more goals. Now, he doesn't play for a prolific team. Bologna finished 5th in Serie A, and, rarely finish in that position. That's a very good season for them. So, of course, a step up to Manchester United is completely different. And I always feel like I say that with players coming over from a different league. But it's true. You see players struggling here sometimes with the spotlight, with the intensity, with the league in itself. It is very different. So, a transitional phase will be expected, of course. But if you just look at his pure metrics in terms of, big chances that have been converted, 57% conversion rate, which is decent in that league. Can that translate over to the Premier League? He's also well aware that he needs to be a little bit more selfish in front of goal if you want to get your numbers up. And some kind of call him not really a pure centre forward, which he'd probably admit himself. Now, he talks about how Thiago Motta tweaked his game. And I think this is an interesting quote. He said, Motta has transformed me into a 9.5. However, he says he has to remember that I am the only centre forward in that team and stay more inside the area. And I think, look, we've seen how good Erik ten Hag is with young players. Garnacho, Kobe, Willy Kambwala, Ahmad, and the list can go on and on. I think he can work with him really. Dutch as well, you've got that Dutch connection. So I think it's a match made in heaven. I think you could coach him. I think you could get the best out of him. And people have gone about Weghorst and how he didn't score any goals or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But actually, sometimes players have really big importance. I was speaking before specifically about creating space for others. And I think that's what United need sometimes up top. We know the wingers are selfish and they also need to go the opposite way and start providing more for the striker, especially when Rasmus is inside. But if you want to bring a Zirkzee in, as Rashford as like an inside forward, he can almost become our Firmino in that sense. So I'd look forward to a signing like this. And he's 23 years old. He's got plenty of time. But, of course, we're not the only club interested. Europe can smell something cooking, and it's not the Rock's famous lasagna. This summer, Zirkzee is undoubtedly on the list of several top clubs. It has to say as well, Bologna had a pretty good season. Will he be absolutely against staying there? I don't think, but he'll certainly be looking at opportunities now. I think AC Milan are sniffing around at the minute. Obviously, United are very interested. And with a rumoured release clause of, I think, 40 million euros, you're giving clubs an option here to sign a player who's young enough to keep developing, whilst also having the quality to have an instant impact and could compete with Rasmus Højlund in United's case. So if Man United are walking in, you've had Dimarzio recently has announced that last night, if United pay what the agent wants, which is a pretty big, huge commission fee, then there's nothing AC Milan can do about it or any other club. Zirkzee's open to a Premier League move, and that move could likely happen. So it looks like Man United are set to hijack the deal for Zirkzee at the time of recording this. Of course, things can change very quickly in the window. So who knows? Right now, he might be an AC Milan player. I have no idea. But as it stands right now, he's open and excited about the possibility of playing for Manchester United. And why wouldn't you be? So just to finish off and round off with my opinion on this, I think the price of his release clause, the fact he's on £19,000 a week at Bologna, wage-wise. So you're not going to have to give him a massive wage. He's not going to be playing a lot in the Euros, so he should be fit and fresh and ready for the start of the season. I think it's worth a gamble, man. I really, really do. We need, you're not spending 70, 80 million quid here. It's 34 million quid, which is a very good price. We need a different profile up top. He's tailor-made for the Premier League. You think about having two young, dynamic, hungry strikers competing for that one spot. You could just get the best out of both of them. But it's not about what I think. It's also your show as well. What do you people think? Should we gamble on this striker? Are you not a fan of him? Is it just because he's cheaper? That's why Ineos are kind of sniffing around this. Or is it that he's been well scouted and Ineos genuinely believe, he could be some real competition for Rasmus Højlund? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Leave any sort of feedback that you want. You are all a bunch of legends. I appreciate the support from every single one of you. And thank you for watching this video. And I'll see you in the next one. See you in a bit.